This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are the things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations.
Good afternoon. We're doing it live, doing more at 4 right here, weekday afternoons. We get right down to business for the news-driven hour right after Ben Shapiro and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. It's Mottek On Money, live on the air, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com and the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, all of your favorite podcast platforms. Well, stocks finishing lower today with the NASDAQ coming off an all-time high. The Dow posting its longest losing streak since 1978, all of a sudden. How about that? Investors taking in the strong retail sales report we got today. And also tomorrow, we're expecting the Federal Reserve's a big moment in the spotlight with Fed Chairman Jerome Powell and company expected to cut interest rates again tomorrow. The Dow pulling back. Some money coming off the table today, down 267 to 43,450. The blue chip index down for the 9th consecutive trading day and booked its largest 9-day point decline since August 5th. But as far as this 9-day losing streak is concerned, haven't seen anything like this since February of 1978. The S&P 500 pulling back 23 points. The NASDAQ coming off its record high, down 65 points at 20,109. United Health stock was by far the biggest drag on the Dow Jones Industrial Average today, pulling back nearly $13 at 485 and change. The company's CEO was assassinated recently in New York. On top of that, we saw continued weakness in shares of companies with pharmacy benefit manager or drug-selling middlemen businesses, according to MarketWatch. Most of the headlines about the Federal Reserve, about the policy cut expected coming up tomorrow. We're watching the latest headlines on that. And, of course, we'll be on it big time tomorrow when it happens at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning our time. That's when the announcement will come. And then the Fed Chairman Jerome Powell, a half hour later, will be delivering a full-blown news conference, taking questions at the Federal Reserve on what's expected to be a quarter-point cut and a statement on the economy and the whole works. Of course, we'll have complete coverage again tomorrow afternoon on that. Looks like shares of Intuitive Machines moved higher today, going into the stratosphere. This is a space exploration company planning to send its second historic mission to the lunar surface early next year. Intuitive Machines shares moving up 7%, seeing its biggest daily percentage gain since, just about a month ago. It gained about 13%. Intuitive Machines shares moving higher today, putting it on pace for a 4-day winning streak. The price of oil moving lower today, despite the tensions in the Middle East and uncertainty in the Middle East. We did see oil prices moving lower, pressured by concerns over the outlook for demand as oil traders looked ahead to the interest rate decision by the Federal Reserve, as well as the latest report on oil supplies from the Energy Information Administration. We did see oil in New York down 63 cents today at $70.08 a barrel, and Brent crude in London down 72 cents at $73.19. Fannie and Freddie making news again. The mortgage finance giants watching those stocks more than double this year amid hopes that President-elect Trump would end the federal government's conservatorship of those companies, those government-sponsored enterprises, when he assumes office in January. Fannie and Freddie shares moving higher today on the order of about 6% after a series of reports recently that reflect the Republican Party's desire to return Fannie and Freddie to the private sector. Companies are not listed and only trade over the counter right now. Tesla stock continued on a roll today, up another $17, just shy of $480. The U.S. Supreme Court, meanwhile, set to hear a bid by fuel producers to challenge California's standards for vehicle emissions and electric cars under a federal air pollution law, what's considered a major case testing California's power to fight greenhouse gases and dictate basically what other states do with their regulations. I'll discuss the latest news with Lauren Fix, editor-in-chief of Car Coach and the co-host of the Total Car Score podcast, will be joining me live later this hour. The drone mystery continues nationwide. A lot of questions remain unanswered. In one of the latest incidents, drones forced airspace blockage for many hours at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, one of our major Air Force installations here in the U.S. I'll discuss the situation with Gordon Chang, China expert and author of numerous books on China, including his latest, Plan Red, China's project to destroy America. Is China behind those drones? He'll weigh in on that. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, and the whole works. Of course, Bitcoin. We're watching Bitcoin at record highs this week. Right now, it's hovering just above $106,000 per Bitcoin. With us now, investment expert Gabriel Wisdom, Managing Director at American Money Management and author of Wisdom on Value Investing. Gabriel Wisdom, thanks very much for coming to the line here this afternoon.
My pleasure, Frank. Thanks for having me. You know, this is the time of the year when everybody's thinking about the next year, 2025, and tomorrow we've got that big Federal Reserve decision, and I saw a CNBC survey that was released today. It showed that some 93% of respondents think that the Federal Reserve will cut rates by another quarter point tomorrow, but only 63% believe it's the right move. And why would that be? I think it's because inflation has been sticky. It's certainly been stuck well above the Fed's target 2% rate. Now, they base these decisions on the so-called Federal Reserve dot plot. That's just a chart of all the Fed participants' opinions about, you know, where the economy is going. And as I mentioned once before, the dot plot has a terrible track record. I mean, it's wrong about 70 to 80% of the time. And this it goes back to the beginning of the dot plot, 1968. So where do we go? We certainly, if we believe the stock market, it's signaling a slowdown. Dry powder as a percentage of total portfolios is now down below 4%. That's not enough dry powder if there's any sort of a correction. Wide-eyed enthusiasm and complacency, no wall of worry to climb. That's what I'm thinking about in 2025.
Very interesting. Well, thanks for laying it out that way and explaining it very clearly. We're on the air live with Gabriel Wisdom with American Money Management. And in the meantime, some money has been coming off the table among the big industrial names. The Dow down for the 9th consecutive session. Haven't seen anything like this since 1978. What about that? Is that significant at this point? And might we be in for a surprise tomorrow?
You know, Frank, I think it is significant because normally this time of the year, you get a Santa Claus rally. You get enthusiasm. You get buying. Retail sales have been strong, but that's not the case. So if the market is a barometer or an indicator of future economic activity, usually looks out some on average about 6 months, then we may be heading for some kind of disruption. It wouldn't be unusual in the first year of a new presidential cycle. There's the old Buffett ratio that Warren Buffett has mentioned many times, and this it takes the total value of all U.S. companies, the Wilshire 5,000 companies, and then divides that by the total gross domestic product of the United States. So you got a U.S. Economy that's about 60 trillion. Rather, you have a U.S. stock market that's about 60 trillion. You have gross domestic product at about 29 trillion. That ratio is sky high. It's almost 3%. We rarely get there. It's signaling a sell.
Very interesting. And another point that I should bring up, we did get those retail sales numbers today, up 0.7% in November. That came in better than most analysts' expectations as Santa's helpers got to work. And I don't know if you saw the recent write-up here. It said the retail sales surge is now testing the bets on more Fed rate cuts in 2025. And maybe, as you mentioned, maybe even tomorrow.
Well, that's right. You know, the U.S. consumer is obviously in very good shape. You know, we've heard stories about the pandemic. Excess savings have rung out, but we have strong real wage gains, certainly. We have rising asset prices of stocks and homes, and that clearly allows Americans to save less if they want to and spend more. And it's prevalent, as Ed Yardeni pointed out in a recent report, it's most prevalent among baby boomers They hold a record $80 trillion of the $154 trillion in total U.S. household wealth. And so they're spending money.
Unfortunately, the credit card bill is $81 trillion, probably, right? So things balance out somehow. Now, what about Bitcoin and the cryptos? Is that inflationary, by the way? It's been like shooting fish in a barrel lately. Of course, crypto's a lot more fun when it goes up, and it has been going up, and hard to ignore Bitcoin above $108,000 this week. Right now, it's just above $106,000, and certainly that's got to be a factor here for inflation too, don't you think?
Well, I think it's a factor. What I wonder is the Bitcoin, which is the original cryptocurrency. Obviously, it's the leader. It has the brand. But I wonder if the U.S. election hasn't paid a dividend, and the prospects of the U.S. actually owning Bitcoin as a strategic reserve asset, which Cynthia Lummis, a U.S. Senator from Wyoming, has proposed. She's introduced a bill to establish what she calls a strategic Bitcoin reserve. This is all very optimistic. So Bitcoin is on a roll.
Yeah. And what about analog gold, as we call it, good old-fashioned gold? We talked about the digital gold here with the cryptos now. Analog gold up $1 at the moment at $2,663 an ounce. It hit record highs this year. And silver also had a big run, right now just below $31 an ounce. What about gold and silver here? And what kind of reaction might we see among the precious metals once we get the news tomorrow morning?
Well, we're running out of some of these metals, particularly gold and silver. And, in a recent statement, Apple said, and I believe it was today, that they're disputing allegations from the Democratic Republic of the Congo in Rwanda, that they've been using conflict minerals, as they call them, and those are tantalum, tin, tungsten, and most interesting, gold. Gold is used in iPhones, and Apple now is saying they're going to stop buying from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Rather, they're responding to a criminal complaint that was filed against the company in France and Belgium.
Very interesting. We're on the air live with Gabriel Wisdom, Managing Director at American Money Management and author of Wisdom on Value Investing. NVIDIA suddenly in correction territory here, down $1.61 at 130 and change. It's part of the Dow Jones Industrial Average. Now, what happened with NVIDIA here?
Well, I think NVIDIA is falling because of competition. There's been commentary, Frank, from Microsoft and from Google indicating that their artificial intelligence spending is going to grow at a slower pace in the future. And then we've got new competition that's coming, likely from Broadcom. Broadcom says that from this most recent earnings report that they're working on a custom AI chip, and so is Amazon. In early December, they said they're building a supercomputer with the new servers and their own AI chips. So there's more competition. On top of that, there's the Chinese government. NVIDIA is being accused of some sort of antitrust situation. The competition authority there in China has launched an antitrust probe, and it has to do with some sort of a networking merger that they disagreed with. So right now they're headwinds for NVIDIA, but on balance, it's a great company. More competition coming, certainly.
All right. Tesla kissing record highs again, and Elon Musk's net worth stratospheric at this point, above $400 billion. Make it above $450 billion. Tesla up another 17 today, just shy of 480 here now. Obviously, he's been in the spotlight lately with President-elect Donald Trump. What are your thoughts on Tesla and Elon Musk's empire at this point?
What's funny, Frank, is in 2022, a couple of years ago, Elon Musk had lost so much money that the Guinness World Records had recognized him for the largest loss of personal fortune in history. His net worth, because of what had happened to Tesla, had fallen to around, he'd lost some $100 billion. I know that. I don't have the actual number on his net worth. It's kind of hard to handicap, but now we see a reversal of fortune. Obviously, the electric vehicle market is suffering as a result of competition from Tesla and also other rivals in China, particularly a BYD. But Tesla is the clear leader here, and the rest of the EV market is suffering.
And I just looked it up. Elon Musk's net worth today in real time, $464 billion, up $9.5 billion today.
Well, it's a good day.
Absolutely. Well, and congratulations to Elon Musk for that. And daily moves in the billions of dollars. That is quite remarkable. We all wish we could see that, Gabriel Wisdom. So help us out here. Any specific places where we are putting money now and or taking it off the table?
Well, Frank, I'm betting on more merger and acquisitions activity next year, but haven't made any purchases yet. And what's got my interest, and it seems to be happening more and more often, you've got Honda Motor, for example, and Nissan Motor. They're starting negotiations to merge because of the growing competition from bigger electric vehicle makers. And we're going to see more of this, and I think it's a positive step. Also, General Motors stock is up some 45%. Because of the electric vehicle success that they've had, even though they're really not making money yet with it. And then I like the expanding power demand. It's expected to double by 2040, and I think electric utilities are going to do well. Our grid today is certainly underutilized. I'm looking at Edison International, symbol EIX, the parent company of SoCal Edison. And then finally, the Standard & Poor's has done very, very well, the 500, because of 7 companies, because those 7 companies represent such a big portion of the overall value. But there's an equal weighted S&P 500 where each of the 500 companies represent the same percentage of price. And the equal weighted S&P 500 is up only 16%, where the S&P 500 is up 27%. Historically, the equal weighted S&P does very, very well, even better than the S&P 500. So the symbol there is RSP, Romeo Sierra Papa. I like this one.
Terrific, Gabriel. Thank you very much for your thoughtful analysis as always. It's always wonderful to speak with you live on the air here. That is investment expert Gabriel Wisdom, managing director at American Money Management, based right here in Southern California, author of Wisdom on Value Investing. We'll be tuning in to the Fed decision tomorrow, Gabriel, and hope to talk to you again before the end of the year. Thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Thank you, Frank.
Out to the freeways we go now on 790 KBC.
You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch.
Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. The Grinch showing up on Wall Street today instead of Santa Claus as we approach Christmas and Hanukkah here. The Dow down 267, settling at 43,450. The Dow now down for the 9th session in a row. Haven't seen a losing streak like this since February of 1978. Markets are reacting to the stronger than expected retail sales report that came out today for the month of November, and we await the Fed's policy decision tomorrow morning. That'll be 11 o'clock our time here in Los Angeles. The decision, statement on the economy, and a decision on interest rates, and it's widely expected the Fed will be cutting rates again tomorrow by a 0.25 percentage point. That'll be coming out at 11 o'clock, and then we'll have a full-blown news conference from Fed Chairman Jerome Powell at 11:30. The Dow coming in for a closing loss of 267. The S&P 500 down 23. The NASDAQ slipping 65, coming off its record high, now at 20,109. The volatility index moving higher by 8% today. Gold moving higher, up $1 at $2,663 an ounce. Silver up 4 cents at $30.97 an ounce. The price of oil higher, up 15 cents to $70.23 a barrel in New York. And it looks like in London moving to 73.32 a barrel, up 13 cents. NVIDIA sliding and now in correction territory. That is more than 10% below its recent high, down $1.61 at 130 and change. United Health shares are moving lower today. In fact, the biggest drag on the Dow Jones Industrial Average, down nearly $13 at 485.52. The yield on the 10-year note now at 4.40%. Tesla, a big winner again today, up nearly $17, just shy of $4.80 a share. And now the latest news for you here on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here on 790 KABC. Good day for Elon Musk. His net worth went up $9.5 billion today to $464 billion. Yep. Moved above $400 billion just about a week ago. Now he's up to $464 billion. This has Tesla stock continued on a roll today, up another $17, just shy of $480. EV world in the spotlight these days. The U.S. Supreme Court now is set to hear a bid by fuel producers to challenge California's standards for vehicle emissions and electric cars under a federal air pollution law in what's considered a major case testing California's power to influence regulations around the country and in an effort to fight greenhouse gases, among other things. Joining us live now is Lauren Fix, editor-in-chief of Car Coach and the co-host of the Total Car Score podcast. Or go to car expert here in car-conscious Southern California. Lauren Fix, thanks for taking the call this afternoon.
Anytime. Yes, this Supreme Court case is quite interesting. But there's two groups actually going to the Supreme Court. One of them is the gas regulations. Obviously, the gas refinery companies don't want more regulations. They want to be able to sell gasoline-powered vehicles within the state because the state, as we know, cannot support 100% electric. That's blatantly obvious when you have brownouts and times where you get notifications not to charge your car. So the other group of people is very interesting is the car industry as well as the some of the attorney generals. So this has all been going on. They're suing not just the EPA, they're suing the state of California, and they're trying to go after the California Air Resources Board. So the case is being brought initially by the state of Ohio and 16 other Republican-led states who claim that by letting California set its own emission standards, the federal government, or more specifically the EPA, is allowing the state to operate as a quasi-federal regulator pertaining to global climate change. That's right from their law case. And the California Air Resources Board has increased its power under the Obama administration, and now we need to take away the power. And if you want to have it for your area, that's perfectly fine, because we don't want people to have smog. But having more power over the states is actually unconstitutional per the federal papers.
Very interesting. And put another way, the fuel producer said that California is acting as a junior varsity EPA and does not have the power to set regulations to fight climate change and enforce a transition to electric vehicles. This, according to the court papers filed with the Supreme Court, major questions being asked here of the Supreme Court. When is this going to be decided?
Well, it'll probably be under the Trump administration, but we do know that once President Trump gets in office, and he did say on day one, and I expect that he will follow through because he's pretty good about that he will remove the mandate and the $7,500 tax credit. And on top of that, he has to pull that California waiver. Now, last time President Trump was in office, he waited to the end of his 4 years and then went and attacked the California Air Resources Board, or CARB, which I find actually amusing because CARB means carburetor in the car world. But going after CARB, don't wait. This has got to go through the courts. This is going to take time. It's going to impact a lot of different companies and a lot of different people. So you have to make sure that if you're going to make this change, that you get on it immediately. I'm hoping that Lee Zeldin and whoever's in charge of the EPA becomes the people that, I believe it's Lee Zeldin, go out and start making these changes. Sean Duffy will be doing the Department of Transportation, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and I am sure, without a question, that they'll do better than their predecessors.
All right. Elon Musk probably having dinner with President-elect Trump again tonight someplace. They become good buddies, and this, as Elon Musk's wealth has just it's been knocking it out of the park lately at $464 billion at last check, according to the Forbes real-time billionaires list. Given his close relationship now with the president, what do you expect to see for Tesla and for the EV business overall?
Well, it's interesting. I posted an article on my Car Coach Reports website if anyone's interested in a deeper dive, because we won't have time to do that. But Elon Musk is actually pro getting rid of the tax credit and the mandate. And you would think, why would you want to do that? That's you sell those carbon credits because he owns about 66% of the electric car market right now. People think electric cars, they think Elon Musk, they think Tesla. And although other brands do sell great product, and I've reviewed them all on my Car Smarts channel, it's really important to note that he still takes the lead. Everyone takes a loss on these cars. And if he's the only game in town, or other than maybe Rivian and Lucid, he certainly takes a bigger piece of the market share for those that are interested. In the meantime, Gavin Newsom says, we're going to create our own tax credit here in the state of California, but they're going to exclude Tesla, which I think is going to lead to a court case.
That's very interesting, right? Is Tesla finally getting the credit for being American-made and the number one car maker in the world?
It's just starting to come around. If you look at who's the American car makers right now, it used to be Ford, GM, Chrysler. It's now Ford, GM, Tesla. Chrysler is Stellantis, as their current name is Belgium-based, and that's where their corporate offices are. So although they are making product here, they're really struggling right now, not just here, but on a global basis. And they're talking about moving some of their truck and Jeep production to Mexico to try and cut costs. That's going to be a problem with the UAW. They will fight them. But I will tell you, if you're looking for a deal as we roll into the Christmas weekend, there are definitely deals at Nissan, Volkswagen, Jaguar, and also at Stellantis, because all four brands are probably in the worst position of all the car brands that are out there.
General Motors stock has revved up this year. Was mentioned earlier by Gabriel Wisdom. The stock's up 42% since the start of the year. It's been pulling back a little bit here, hovering around $51 a share. Of course, GM had its issues. Remember, we were talking about that Hummer that sold, I think, a total of three vehicles about a year or so
They've
ago.
Sold more than that now, obviously.
Did they? Four? How many more?
I mean, that's great. I think initially there were a few that were sold, but then they were having trouble getting production ramped up. They'll sell whatever they can make, obviously. At some point, they are kind of cool vehicles. They have a very narrow market. So obviously they've got a better handle on how many vehicles are going to sell. Much like the original Hummer, they're not going to sell millions and millions of them, but they're more of like a place to say this is what we can do. As far as General Motors, I'm surprised their stock values have gone up, considering the fact that they ended their robo-taxi under the Cruise partnership, which doesn't make sense because that's what the company was supposed to do. So what is the company going to do now? Are they going to be bringing in some of these technologies into current production cars? That's what we have to find out, or are they going to fold Cruise division? And that should be interesting to watch.
Yeah. And Ford, that stock's been stuck in the mud here, hovering just shy of $10 a share. Let's see, that Ford share's down 18% since the start of this year. We've seen those reports that Ford loses a lot of money on every single EV they make. What is it going to take to turn Ford around here?
Selling less electric cars they don't make money on. Right now, they're down about $44,000 for every single Lightning electric F-150 truck or Mustang Mach-E. So they're offsetting it by increasing the price of cars, and that is certainly hurting them. Certain vehicles that are more exclusive, more limited, I've seen as high as $20,000 over the previous year's price. So they're trying to offset the loss they're taking on every car by increasing the price of their current cars that do sell. And what that does is mean less cars get sold. So it's a bad business plan from that perspective. And I start to wonder, although I like Jim Farley, he's a great guy and we know each other, I wonder if his job is potentially in danger, because that's what typically happens at a company like that where the CEO is a family name. And if they feel you're not carrying your weight, or they're not making the numbers, or they feel they're embarrassed, they get rid of whoever's at the top.
All right, here we are, just shy of 2025 here. We have the LA Auto Show, the Orange County Auto Show. And what's caught your eye here as we go into 2025?
Well, there are lots of vehicles that were available to see from the local dealers at the LA Auto Show. And one thing I can tell you is the Koreans have really stolen a lot of these car shows. You've got Kia came in with their EV9 and their EV9 GT, which is an electric 3-row SUV. If you want it, especially in California, it's certainly an option to consider. Genesis brought us the new GV70, both electrified and gas-powered, so they're offering both. Which is very smart. So they're offering what consumers want. We also saw a product coming out from Volkswagen, their new Tiguan, was there. And so we're seeing the Koreans mostly have really taken a big chunk of these shows, and also the awards that are coming out. You start looking at, the best of and who's won, car of the year, fill in the blank. And I'm on 2 of the juries for World Car and for North American Car and Truck of the Year. And of course, there are Koreans that are in the finalists. And the last few years, they have just been taking every trophy home. And so what you're seeing is better quality product than they've ever had, because they hired a lot of German designers, manufacturers, engineers, and they're putting out better products with a longer warranty of 10 years, 100,000 miles, plus they're including all the maintenance, which makes a big difference.
Terrific. Well, I'm glad you reminded me about the awards that you're judging. So we have to add Judge to your title now. Judge Lauren Fix, Editor-in-Chief of Car Coach and the co-host of the Total Car Score podcast. Lauren, it's always wonderful to speak with you. Thank you very much. Wish you a wonderful Merry Christmas and Happy Holiday season, and look forward to speaking with you again very, very soon.
Thank you. Same to you and all of your listeners.
Thank you very much, Lauren Fix, live with us here on 790 KBC. Mottek On Money continues here on 790 KBC. Thousands of drones flying around the country. No answers as to where they came from. President-elect Trump claims President Biden's administration knows what is happening regarding the unexplained drone sightings over New Jersey, New York, and other states, including California, by the way. President-elect Trump making the comments during a lengthy news conference he held with reporters at Mar-a-Lago, saying the U.S. military certainly knows the origin of the drones. The drone mystery, though, continues as far as the public is concerned. Tips are pouring in over the 5,000 drone sightings. Let's bring in an expert on all this. Might China be behind these drones? Let's bring in Gordon Chang now, China expert and author of a number of books on China, including his latest, Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. Gordon Chang, thank you very much for coming to the line. And where do you think these drones originate?
There are a number of different scenarios. One of them is that they could be foreign. Matter of fact, some people in the Air Force think they are, but the Air Force has been ordered to stand down, according to rumors. Michael McCaul, who is chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, thinks they're Chinese, but there are alternative explanations. The Pentagon has said that they don't think that these are foreign, that they're domestic. If they're domestic, Frank, I think that this is even more ominous because it looks like the federal government is conducting an operation. And the question is, why would they be doing that? There are reports of 2 radiation spikes in the New York metropolitan area. And that reminds me that for more than a decade, federal officials have been worried about the North Koreans taking a nuclear device, breaking it apart, bringing in the parts into the United States and reassembling it in the city of their choice. So although I'm not sure that that is the case, we can't rule that one out because we have a federal government that is not really forthcoming with the American people.
Very concerning, and the latest among the latest sightings near Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, right? Very sensitive U.S. Military installation.
Yes, and in California, a Chinese national has been charged with operating a drone over Vandenberg Space Force Base. There's a whole different set of drone issues which are over U.S. bases in which foreign nationals have been implicated. And one of the most concerning ones, a series of incidents at Langley Air Force Base in Virginia, so where there appears to be very large drones. The one thing that we can say, though, is, there are a lot of different drones that have been sighted, but some of these drones are very large, the size of cars. And that means these are probably not hobbyists. And that means either they're the federal government doing something which is of concern, or it could be a foreign power using them for surveillance purposes, as was the case at Langley.
And you mentioned that situation here in California. I was going to ask you about that, of course. The news there is that a Chinese citizen was arrested at the San Francisco airport on criminal charges that he illegally flew an unregistered drone above Vandenberg Space Force Base while allegedly taking videos and photos of a SpaceX launch facilities anyway. His arrest preceded by a warrant affidavit issued after a judge heard affirmations over the phone from an FBI agent who'd encountered this guy at Vandenberg on November 30th. This according to reports in Santa Barbara, which is in the area there, Vandenberg Space Force Base. Concern might have heightened as the night before a Falcon 9 had lifted off carrying a spy satellite. What is your reaction to this big news here?
There have been too many of these charges against Chinese nationals to think that this is just an isolated incident. And I think that the civilian justice system is probably not adequate for this, because this looks like an attack on the United States. So we should be treating this differently. If you listen to Pat Ryder's, the Major General who is the Pentagon spokesman, his comments about the drones give you the indication, give you the sense that the Pentagon thinks this is a peace, that we're in peace. But I actually don't think so, because we have, for instance, Chinese leader talking about war all the time, getting prepared for war, flying that spy balloon over U.S. nuclear weapons sites. This is getting more and more serious as these incidents pile up, and we should be taking a much different perspective on this, that we should be getting prepared for what the Chinese might have in store for us.
And we heard from the White House National Security Council spokesperson, Admiral John Kirby, with basically no information. How is it possible that he could come out there and provide no detailed information?
To me, that it is inexplicable. We're adults, and the American public can take the truth. And it's much worse that we have to speculate about what's happening, because we can speculate about some very ominous scenarios. The federal government can clear this up, and I'm sure the truth is probably not as bad as some of the things that I've just talked about. But in the absence of information, we have to talk about those things, because they are real possibilities, Frank. And that means I think the American public is on a greater edge than they need to be.
When are we going to see these things shot down?
They should have been shot down a long time ago. Over Langley Air Force Base, this was obviously surveillance of a facility. Those should have been shot down right away.
Gordon Chang, thank you very much for taking the call live with us here. That is China expert Gordon Chang, author of numerous books on China. His latest, by the way, is Plan Red, China's project to destroy America. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz. Coming your way next here on 790 KBC.
O'Shea Jackson Jr. and TJ Jefferson bring their unique take on sports entertainment with no contest wrestling, with guests like WWE Hall of Famer Mark Henry.
What is that night like for you as world champion?
I remember getting in my hotel. I'm looking at the chair with the title on it, and I remember crying. I couldn't believe that it was in my room and that I was sitting here looking at this title like it was a person.
The No Contest Wrestling Podcast, part of the Rich Eisen Podcast Network, wherever you listen.